Students in Old Saybrook may soon get to reintroduce themselves to some old friends here.
District leaders removed classroom pets earlier this week because of safety concerns, but now after public outcry and a few safety guidelines, the animals are now back in. Your reporter Roger Susanen joins us now live in Old Saybrook with more on this compromise. And Roger, a lot of families excited about this change.
Yeah, good morning, ladies. And you're right. I think a lot of families, students, and parents are probably celebrating because, get this, when this whole thing initially played out, more than 300 people signed a petition about this issue. And one little guy became the face of this classroom pet protest. Meet Oscar, the superstar party animal who is welcome again at Old Saybrook schools. The bearded dragon had been a classroom pet at Goodwin Elementary until district leaders removed him and every other classroom animal for safety reasons. They were worried about allergies and liability in particular and wanted to get some policies on the books. District families, though, pushed back. More than 300 people joined the Free Oscar campaign and signed a petition arguing classroom animals teach kids important lessons. The Board of Ed has been listening. Last night, members unanimously approved the return of classroom pets with a few important guidelines. First, teachers must tell parents about the animals ahead of time to mitigate allergy concerns. And the school nurse must sign off and explain how they would treat any injuries. The rules pave the way for the pets to rejoin their human friends again at Old Saybrook schools. And one other guideline that was put into place last night is that any teacher who wants to bring a pet into the classroom must agree to shoulder the burden of any costs that arise because of that animal. Reporting live in Old Saybrook this morning, I'm your reporter Roger Susanen, Channel 3 Eyewitness News. I'll send it back to you.